Girivaradari. Yasodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Shayaradha Madhava Kunjabihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Shayaradha Madhava Kunjabihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Marani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning. We're reading from Canto 10, Chapter 88, Text 9, Text 10, Text 11, and Text 12. So Text 9 is the first one, so we'll chant together. Sayada Vitado Jogo Nirvinasyatanehaya Matparai Krita Maitrasya Karishe Mad Anugraham Sayada Vitato Jogo Nirvinasyatanehaya Matparai Krita Maitrasya Karishe Madanugraham Sayada Vitata Jogo Nirvinasyatanehaya Matparai Krita Maitrasya Karishe Madanugraham. Please chant. Sayada Vitato Jogo Vinasyatanehaya Matparai Krita Maitrasya Karishe Madanugraham. Sayada Vitato Jogo Nirvinasyatanehaya Matparai Krita Maitrasya Karishe Madanugraham. Sayada Vitato Jogo Nirvinasyatanehaya Matparai Krita Maitrasya Karishe Madanugraham. Thank you very much. The word for word. Sa, he, yada, when, vitata, useless, udyoga, his attempt, nirvina, frustrated, syat, becomes, dana, for money, ihaya, with his endeavor, mat, to me, parai, with those who are devoted, krita, for him who has made, maitrasya, friendship, karishye, I will show, mat, my, anugraham, mercy. And the translation for text 9, and this is BBT translation. When he becomes frustrated in his attempts to make money and instead befriends my devotees, I bestow my special mercy upon him. Text 10. Tad Brahma Paramam Shukshman Chinmatram Sadhanantakam Vignayatmataya Dira Samsarai Parimuchyate. Translation for text 10. A person who has thus become sober fully realizes the absolute as the highest truth, the most subtle and perfect manifestation of spirit, the transcendental existence without end. In this way, realizing that the supreme truth is the foundation of his own existence, he is freed from the cycle of material life. Text 11. Ato mamsu durajyam hitvanyan bhajate jana tatas ta astu toshebhyo labdarajya shriyodhata mata pramata varadan vishmayanti avajanate. And the translation for text 11. Because I am difficult to worship, people generally avoid me and instead worship other deities who are quickly satisfied. When people receive kingly opulences from these deities, they become arrogant, intoxicated with pride, and neglectful of their duties. They dare to offend even the demigods who have bestowed benedictions upon them. Text 12. Shapa prasadayor isha brahma vishnu shiva daya sadhya shapa prasadonga shivo brahmana chachuta. And the translation for text 12. Sukadev Goswami said, Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva and others are able to curse or bless one. Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are very quick to curse or bestow benedictions, my dear king, but the infallible Supreme Lord is not. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Kadhamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapsa Kanchana Gorangi Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Manchakalpa Taribhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Rama Padaswami Iti Namine. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I found myself specifically looking at the verse that has the BBT purport, which was text. Which text was that? Text 11. So that text has this translation. Because I'm difficult to worship, people generally avoid me and instead worship other deities, so quickly satisfied. When people receive kingly opulences from these deities, they become arrogant, intoxicated with pride, and neglectful of their duties. They dare to offend even the demigods who have bestowed benedictions upon them. So there's an explanation that's given by Lord Krishna of his mercy. So one hears the term mercy very often in Vaishnava circles. And if you look at the general definition of mercy, it's defined as refraining from punishing those in one's power, or it's defined as kindness in excess of what is expected in fairness. So, and there's another definition of mercy. It says that there's forbearance or compassion. So, text 10 is the most extraordinary word spoken by Krishna, wherein he defines his special mercy. So, let me read text 10 as a refresher. So here's text 10, because this is Krishna defining his mercy. A person who has thus become sober fully realizes the absolute as the highest truth, the most subtle and perfect manifestation of spirit, the transcendental existence without end. In this way, realizing that the supreme truth is the foundation of his own existence, he's freed from the cycle of material life. So within that is actually Krishna's definition of his mercy. So this is what he is saying of his mercy. It is equal to him. His mercy is equal to him. So Srila Vishwanath gives Lord Krishna's words. This is how Srila Vishwanath is highlighting this particular notion that in these words that Krishna has spoken, he's actually speaking about his mercy. So this is how he puts it. These are Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's words that are supposed to be Krishna's words. My mercy is equal to Brahman because it is supremely great and because it is imperceivable to persons with material vision. It is super excellent, paramam, and subtle, shukshman, in the sense that it is inconceivable even to the devotees who is being shown mercy. It is purely spiritual, chinmatram, because of its ability to give an experience of prema ras, the mallow of pure love, and because it is devoid of any material happiness. So again, he's continuing with how he's defining his mercy, Krishna. It exists through all time, means it's sat. And because of it, one has no fear of death. So that's anantakam. As a secondary result, my mercy destroys the cycle of birth and death. So that's the samsara parimuchyate, which is in that particular verse, text 10. So we're going to look at this more closely, Krishna's definition of his mercy. Now, the ordinary definition of mercy does not include its being imperceivable. I mean, we heard what the ordinary definition is. You know, you showing kindness in excess of what is expected. You're not punishing those who are in your power. That's showing mercy. And it's also showing a kind of a compassionate or forbearing kind of mood. So that's showing mercy. So it doesn't include that mercy is imperceivable. So this is a very subtle point that Lord Krishna is making about his mercy. So the this imperceivable aspect of the mercy of Lord Krishna It's explained by Srila Prabhupada. So listen how Srila Prabhupada explains this imperceptible part of Krishna's mercy. And of course, it's how it's been experienced by a devotee who's on the highest plane of connection with Lord Krishna. So he's fully realizing that the mercy of Lord Krishna is none different from Lord Krishna. So here's the explanation of the perceptual, I shouldn't say perceptual exactly, but the realization of that mercy being identical with Lord Krishna. So here's that devotee on that highest plane experiencing it. So Srila Prabhupada refers to the consciousness of that devotee. So here's the devotee's experience and consciousness. That devotee is, and these are Srila Prabhupada's words, is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, he is transcendental to all attachment and detachment. If Krishna wants the devotee, he can do something. And if Krishna, wants the devotee to do which is ordinarily undesirable, and if Krishna wants the devotee, can do, this Srila Prabhupada, anything which is ordinarily undesirable, and if Krishna does not want, he shall not do that which he would ordinarily have done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, to act or not to act is within his control because he acts only under the direction of Krishna. This consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord. So you actually can see the mercy of Lord Krishna in the functioning of a devotee who's understanding and is so closely connected with Lord Krishna that that mercy is none different from Lord Krishna. So they're actually operating in such a way that they're actually hearing from within what Krishna wants them to do or not do. So Srila Prabhupada points out it can often be the opposite of what might have been normal behavior. So Krishna may actually want them to do something that's undesirable. They will do it. Krishna may want them to do something or not want them to do something that they would normally have done for their own satisfaction. So they may be going against what normally might have been the expected behavior. But they are choosing how to act because they're acting under that direction of Krishna. They want to act as Krishna is directing. So it's a kind of consciousness that, a space in consciousness that somebody has come to. So, and that's defined. This consciousness is considered to be the causeless mercy of the Lord. So that's the imperceptible part of mercy that isn't given in normal definitions of mercy. And this comes from a purport in Bhagavad Gita 2:65. So Lord Krishna defines such a person and he gives the means for coming to achieve that mercy. So this is Srila Prabhupada commenting on Lord Krishna's words. So this is how Lord Krishna puts it. A person free from attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. So there's the means is given for how one comes to that point is actually following certain regulations. So we know those kind of regulations as devotees, and it's not performing those activities that fall into the category of outside of pious activities. So one wouldn't take intoxication, or one wouldn't gamble, or one wouldn't have some kind of connection with the female person that's outside of marriage. So like that. So following those regulations, keeping that always in mind and not indulging in that kind of behavior means that one is controlling one's senses. One's not allowing the senses to go astray. So these are called principles of freedom. It's actually going to free one from being subject to the control of one's senses and mind. And this is what is actually the criteria that needs to be filled to obtain that complete mercy of the Lord. The consciousness is actually getting synced up with Lord Krishna's desires. So Krishna defines his mercy as being purely spiritual. And this is because of its ability to give prema ras, so meaning the mallow of pure love can be experienced. So Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he states that prema or love, this mallow, this mood of love for the Lord is of two types. There's prema that comes from the great mercy of the Lord, which is what we're looking at. And this prema includes such things as the Lord giving his association to the devotees. So there's Lord Krishna himself who describes how this happens. How does it happen? How is it that the Lord giving his association to the devotees allows for this mood, this mallow, this transcendental emotion of love for the Lord to become manifest is the word often used, so getting manifested. So Lord Krishna describes how this happens. This is how he says it happens. The persons this is from Srimad Bhagavatam in the 11th canto, the 12th chapter. The persons I've mentioned did not undergo serious studies of the Vedic literature, nor did they worship great saintly persons, nor did they execute severe vows or austerities. Simply by association with my devotees and me, they achieve me. So he's actually wiping out all the things one might think are necessary to actually come in contact with Lord Krishna. So it's not undergoing vows or austerities. I remember when I first started serving in the temple in New Jersey a long time ago, and for a long period of time, I was very surprised because it was a very abandoned temple in the week, which is often the case with temples. There's a very small handful of devotees, and then on the weekends one sees the entire community come. So in the weekdays, there was an elderly lady who would cook the noon offering, and I noticed she would, if something was said to her, she just kept silent. So then I understood after some period of time she had taken a vow of silence. So there was no way you were going to be able to actually communicate with her that, perhaps it's not a good idea to leave the flour on the table when you leave after you've cooked. Maybe it needs to be cleaned. There was nothing that could be said. She had taken a vow of silence. There was no communication. So now that's not actually the means for coming to get Krishna's association or his mercy. Krishna himself says that actually it's by association with his devotees and himself that one comes to, he puts it, achieve me, means one comes into that close connection with Lord Krishna through that transcendental love that starts manifesting. So of interest is the fact that Lord Krishna is actually referring to Bali Maharaj and others, but particularly Bali Maharaj when he makes this statement of all these criteria that don't have to be met to achieve him. It's not these vows of silence or undertaking huge austerities, but simply associating with his devotees. So one can achieve prema or love from the mercy of the Lord. And that position is expressed by Bali Maharaj. So listen how Bali Maharaj puts it. And it's such a simple way he puts it. So one may not be able to, because remember that mercy is imperceptible. So when we hear Bali Maharaj speaking, we may not know that he's actually in this position of experiencing this mallow of love. But here's how he puts it. Only by providence have I been forcibly brought under your lotus feet and deprived of all my opulence. Because of the illusion created by temporary opulence, people in general who live under material conditions, facing accidental death at every moment, do not understand that this life is temporary. Only by providence have I been saved from that condition. So it's very interesting. Here's Bali Maharaj. He's displaying that mercy of the Lord, that imperceptible mercy of the Lord. You can see there's no trace of material happiness. He's talking about that he's happy. He's actually let go of all material opulences. So you're understanding there's no material happiness here that he's talking about. And this is reinforcing that idea that Krishna's mercy is purely spiritual. And so we're looking at what is this particular subtle aspect of Krishna's mercy that has come to manifest in somebody who hasn't undertaken austerities, hasn't undertaken great vows, but is simply connected to Krishna, served Lord Krishna in some way, as Bali Maharaj had served Vamanadev, or Lord Krishna in the form of Vamanadev. And this traditional definition of mercy, of showing kindness in excess of what is expected, comes into play in this particular situation with Bali Maharaj, because actually the Lord takes away all his material opulence. So now, who would think on a material level that it's actually showing kindness in excess of what is expected to remove somebody's riches? On the material level, nobody would think that. What kindness is that, to lose all your riches? That would never be considered kindness. But that's the definition of mercy in the traditional sense, is kindness in excess of what is expected. And here Bali Maharaj is saying that kindness in excess of what was expected is that Krishna has removed all his riches, all his opulences, all his wealth, kingdom, fame, everything has been taken away. So he sees that as the special mercy of Lord Krishna. It's very fantastic when one comes to understand this, of what is this mercy of Krishna that he defines as being purely spiritual. And Krishna puts it in such a way that Bali Maharaj himself is even echoing something of that nature, because he understands that it's brought him to the right platform of eternal life. So it's referring, that subtle aspect of the mercy is that the consciousness is elevated. One's consciousness is understanding that there's an eternality of existence. It's not bound to the immediate reality of whatever one's material situation is. So the question arises, how are we to live? I mean, that's the question that comes up. How are we to live? What are the things that matter most in your life? You can ask yourself that question. What is it that matters most to you in your life? So, the most important issue, generally for the common person who's busy trying to pursue material prosperity, because that is generally the case. I mean, I grew up in a household where that was the focus. It was pursuing material prosperity. Everything was done in order to increase wealth. So the greatest fear for the common man is that in engaging in that kind of way, just pursuing material prosperity, is that he doesn't know that after struggling so hard, throughout his life, he's going to have to change his body. And he doesn't even know what body he's going to get next. I mean, it's actually a terrifying thing. It's a huge fear. So people generally are enamored of such a life because of having uncontrolled senses. There's always this idea that more is going to make you happier. So, like in the city where I live in Evanston, it's a very comfortable mood generally. It's a beautiful location close to Lake Michigan. There's a lot of emphasis on preserving nature. So everything has a very well-tended, well-cared-for mood. And the big concern is that, there's demand of people to want to come and live there. So there's this huge quandary. Should they actually tax all the existing citizens more so they can build more property for people who want to come and live there, so the whole place will be even more prosperous? And then the problem comes, if they're actually going to build more buildings for other people to come and live there because of the demand, even though it will mean like greater taxes, there's this problem that next to a beautiful, opulent mansion is going to be a huge box-like structure, because that's the way buildings are built these days. And then there'll be another mansion, another huge box-like structure. So there's a visual illustration done of this. So, what do you want? Do you actually believe you're going to actually be more prosperous by actually putting up all these huge new buildings that can accommodate, 60 families in one building, and then all the single family homes are going to be boxed in? Is that going to be greater prosperity? So there's this question, putting your emphasis on greater material prosperity isn't necessarily the answer. Rather, one actually has to be considering, what is the right action that's actually going to elevate the consciousness. Because actually, at the end of this life, however you've actually lived it, if you've just put your emphasis on material prosperity, you're going to have to change your body. When that body is decrepit, you're going to have to change your body, and you don't know what body you're going into or what situation you're going into if your whole focus has been on material prosperity. So Bali Maharaj, he actually says that his intelligence was stunned. Means it was arrested. He couldn't think properly. So this is something like looking at this Evanston dilemma. I see it like this: the intelligence has got a bit stunned. You're not seeing things properly. So this leads to text 12, where Krishna states that he's difficult to worship because he destroys the happiness of mundane interactions. This is Srila Vishwanath analyzing that verse. I should read it, go back to it. This is what that last verse that we read says. Sukadev Goswami said, Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, and others are able to curse or bless one. Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are very quick to curse or bestow benedictions, my dear king, but the infallible Supreme Lord is not. So, going back to where we were. So, Krishna is difficult to worship because he's actually destroying mundane interactions. So normal, regular ways of dealing actually get destroyed. So this sounds very peculiar if you read it. It means that, let's say, there are persons who actually are engaged in normal interaction. So they think, okay, I want my family to be materially prosperous. I want my children to have little bicycles, little knee pads, little elbow patches, boxes of Band-Aid lined up, should it not be the knees or the elbows that get hurt. I want us to have 2 cars in the family, so, there's freedom of movement, etc., etc. This is the normal thinking. So, if these are normal, ordinary interactions, and actually it's saying that Krishna, it gets to be difficult to worship because he doesn't actually encourage those normal, mundane interactions. One can ask, well, that seems, you may not choose to worship Krishna. It may be easier to go and worship Goddess Durga, where, your material desires will be fulfilled quickly, or Lord Shiva will be easily pleased and you'll get some blessing, some boon. You can ask, please provide me. You'll bring your coconut to the temple and you'll pray to Lord Shiva, please actually provide me with that car, that second car that I want. I used to wash it for years and years in the New Jersey temple, and it was quite clear. Persons would arrive with a coconut and they were praying for the second car. So it's an ordinary kind of interaction where you're actually trying to do an exchange. You're giving something because you want something back. Of course, how a coconut compares to a car, I don't quite know, but that's the kind of interaction that's there. So persons who worship demigods actually lack insight. That's the criticism of persons who worship demigods. There isn't insight. They're becoming proud when they actually are going through that exchange, that interaction between themselves and the demigod, offering something and receiving something in return. That's what they wanted. It leads to pride because they've had access to a particular deity, and so much does the pride actually grow that they actually even can become offensive to the deity that's bestowing the benedictions. There's so many examples we read of demoniac persons in Srimad Bhagavatam who do exactly that. A benediction is bestowed, and then they want to use it against even the benefactor. So there's a coherence in what is the issue under discussion. It means that one is trying to develop insight into the conditions that one finds oneself in while inhabiting the material world in one's material body. One wants to develop some vision, wants some insight into what is actually that condition that one's in. So the emphasis is not just on those mundane interactions, it's not on just material prosperity. And so one has to come to understand, and this is the teaching, and that is because of desires that one is put into difficult circumstances to suffer or to enjoy. So we find ourselves going through suffering as persons who have chosen the difficulty of worshipping Lord Krishna. We do experience difficulties. So one has to come and understand that actually that body that one's been given was made by material nature under the direction of the Supreme Lord, and it functions as a machine that is supposed to fulfill our desires. So one has to develop that objectivity where you understand the way your body is impelled to behave. It's because of the desires you're carrying. So the transcendental vision, when it's developed, it makes one separate from one's bodily activities. So this is a very interesting thing because it's put very simply, but it takes a great deal of that very subtle, imperceptible mercy of Lord Krishna to come to this understanding that one can separate from one's bodily activities. So whatever those impulses are, how the body is impelled to function because of the desires one is carrying, that one can separate oneself and observe those desires very objectively. That takes that imperceptible mercy of Lord Krishna. And it's this kind of vision that develops by that mercy of Lord Krishna. You're separating, you're able to separate yourself from the bodily activities. So this is a description of that vision which can help define what matters in one's life. So because that's a question we have to ask ourselves, what is it that matters to me in my life? So if it's developing this transcendental vision, this that will allow one to separate oneself from the way one's body is impelled to act, this is a freedom that's there. And here's a quote from Bhagavad Gita 13:32. Those with the vision of eternity can see that the imperishable soul is transcendental, eternal, and beyond the modes of nature. Despite contact with the material body, the soul neither does anything nor is entangled. So this is expressed so amazingly by Lord Krishna, but it's actually because of his mercy that one can actually come to this point, this kind of elevation of consciousness that allows one to understand that there's an imperishable soul that is transcendental, it's eternal, it's beyond the modes of nature. So despite the fact that one's having contact with the material body, one is understanding that the soul is separate. The soul is actually acting in that relationship with Lord Krishna. And this is what's going to free one from that entrapment in a body that's just built to act to fulfill one's desires. So one appears to be born because of the body, but actually one is eternal. Isn't born, and in spite of being situated in the material body, one is transcendental and eternal. So that is actually the great, great mercy of Lord Krishna, that one can come to actually understand that. So if there's any thoughts on this particular topic, please feel free.
Krishna. Well, thank you, Krsnarcana. It's a really nice class.
Oh. Thank you.
It's quite brilliant how Srila Sukadev Goswami is answering these questions and, bringing Krishna. The Bhagavatam is just quite wonderful how you answer the questions by the same questions. In so many cases, the same questions have been answered by, in this case, is Krishna answering to Maharaj Yudhisthira. And it's brilliant to be able to understand this question, that how is that, you could compare. So if the worship of Krishna is supreme, why, that mercy manifests as, people having all these, the devotees of Krishna having all these kinds of ordeals and difficulties, Of course, the Pandavas are going to taste more of those ordeals after this situation. This is during Maharaj Yudhisthira is asking this question during the Rajasuya sacrifice time. And then after that, they have to go for 14 years of exile, etc., and the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So, all these ordeals, that devotees have to go through. As you mentioned, sometimes we find devotees struggling with identity or these different difficulties at these things and questioning if you make the right choice and all the things one have to go through all these obstacles. So how is that? Where is the mercy there? And then the answer is like, is this very subtle and imperceivable mercy that is not material, it's spiritual. The reason we cannot understand it is because you still have to become free or purified from this material condition. So it's quite brilliant. And that brings to the questions as devotees, that capacity of understanding this spiritual, this subtle mercy of the Lord, imperceivable, is obviously not easy, even as devotees. You mentioned in the class. In general, we learn as devotees who are still conditioned by material, by we're still materially conditioned. We have to go through, as we go through the different ordeals, Krishna gave us some light, or the mercy is there, so we're able to gradually understand and detach, that type of thing. He gave us the example of people, devotees like Bali Maharaj. But Bali Maharaj was he's a Mahabhagavat. He's one of the 12 Mahajans. He's a devotee who perfectly understands. So for him was the ordeal. Immediately he understood the imperceivable mercy. He was capable to understand that imperceivable mercy. But I'm not Bali Maharaj. However, I still understand when I'm going through ordeals, then I have the capacity to understand, they have to be, I have to understand Krishna's mercy. So you go into some internal process to understand Krishna's mercy, and you come to some realization, that strengthen your faith. However, it's not the same. That realization, not necessarily, is you adding steps to come to that full understanding of Krishna's mercy, spiritual mercy. So these small steps that we do, these small realizations that we have to being able to compare it to an understanding of Krishna's mercy, of that is not the same. So the idea of how do we deal with this situation in a very practical and realistic way, that I am a devotee who still holds material desires, who is not free from material condition. So in that situation, that blocks my understanding of Krishna's mercy, spiritual mercy, full understanding. So how can I properly relate or understand, or at least, being able to connect to that mercy from that perspective? That's a thought that I have, to actually, more about it.
Yes, that's a very nice going through what was presented and coming to the particular, perhaps, conclusion that it actually does present a question that the regular devotee, not being on that very elevated state of consciousness where there is that very intimate connection with Lord Krishna of the mallow of pure love existing, that actually when one is experiencing difficulties, how does one process so that one is actually seeing that connection with Lord Krishna and understanding that it is part of his great mercy that is of such a subtle spiritual nature, and does require a great deal of contemplation. So it's an interesting point because you look at the external. So the external may be that one actually gets some suffering. So the suffering may be, the most obvious one is some physical suffering because there's no way of avoiding it. There's this pain, that pain. And you have to actually live with this constant physical reminder that something's amiss. So then, okay, how is one going to deal with it? That understanding that it's actually Krishna's mercy that one is experiencing that pain. So one takes it that anything that's manifesting on the gross level is coming from a more subtle level. So on the subtle level, tracing it back, what is one thinking? How is one's intelligence working? So it means possibly, because the mind is the repository of desires and the body is the, it's that machine that's been built to fulfill those desires. And now one is taken to a path that is putting an emphasis on shifting focus to performing actions that are pleasing to Krishna or are in line with progressing spiritually by acting in consciousness that it's for Krishna. It means that there's going to be conflict in the mind at different times. The mind may be pushing to fulfill certain desires a particular way, but then one has to curtail that because one has actually got a new focus. It's actually the desire is to try and act to please Krishna. So there will naturally be some conflict at different times. So that physical suffering is often related to the conflict that's happening mentally. And the mental conflict, it can be resolved because there's a system for going through looking at one's mind, and that is seeing what is it externally that is the feeling, the emotion that's manifesting, and then one has to trace it back because generally you have to look, where does it come from, where does it come from, where does it come from? So then if one traces it back, it may be that there's actually unresolved things from the past. So it does require some introspection and some examination of the mind, and perhaps sorting out some putting that feeling into the context where it actually originated and looking at that original situation and getting a new understanding of it so then it can actually not be intruding so prominently in the present. That's one thought. And that's many persons go to psychologists to examine the mind and the functionings of the mind that's carrying these different emotions, impressions. But because of the good fortune of having Vedic knowledge, the intelligence can come into play where one is actually reminding oneself that because one has chosen to be on this path of Krishna consciousness, there's the kindness of Krishna that can permit one to actually have the strength to examine and put something in place in the mind. So one is actually strengthened, that one is freeing oneself, because otherwise one would be carrying those same things into the next body. So there's a discarding of the old and the useless and the intrusion of unsorted things from the past. That's one thought. There may be other responses. Of course, I'm talking probably because I'm a product also of my particular education and outlook. And it was one of studying psychology, so I do tend to have that slant. But I certainly think that it's one that can assist with keeping the focus on the incredible mercy that one is actually receiving, even if it appears to be suffering. It's actually freeing oneself from the subtle that is causing that physical suffering in the first place. So thank you very much for your very kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.